Storytelling Podcast, episode number 2. Welcome to the Storytelling Podcast, where everything's fictional, even you. And now, here are your hosts, two guys and a girl who hate Game of Thrones, Garrett, Zach, and Cristal. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Storytelling Podcast, the podcast that's all about fiction, fiction, and more fiction, and telling the best truths through the medium of lies. I am your host, Garrett Robinson, and with me today, as they were last week, are Z.C. Bolger, author of Danny Calloway and the Puzzle House, and Cristal Logothetis, pen name of V.C. Cole, author of Via Rosal. What's up, guys?
Hey.
Hey.
All right, so last week we had an hour and a half of technical issues before we could get started, and this week it was only a half an hour. So, hey, we're moving up in the world.
Yeah, that's good.
That's an improvement.
This
Zach is getting better and better.
Better and better at fixing your crap.
Because it was Zach last week. You know, I've listened back to the first episode several times now, and Zach, you mentioned a couple of times that you wanted to be like Indiana Jones, and why was that again?
That's what Indiana Jones does. He fucks lesbians a lot.
Right. That was sorry. That was probably super quiet, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was very quiet.
Yeah.
Wait, I heard it.
We're gonna like totally not be professional, and what the hell?
I can see this. Yeah, I see how that's working.
Yeah, this is awesome. Okay, so let's just move swiftly onward there. Actually, do you guys want to hear some interesting facts about the first episode?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first of all, you're not going to believe how many subscribers we have.
I'm going to guess.
Go ahead.
1.5. I think it's one person like a midget.
I would say we have 3, and one of them is in Kazakhstan or something.
Okay, well, actually, I didn't think it was that many subscribers, but compared to what you guys are guessing, it's actually pretty impressive. We have 16 subscribers.
Damn!
Really?
I know.
Wow.
16. Yeah. Which is not super impressive compared to like other podcasts in their second episode. Like, I figured that we had more than 16 friends in this world. But,
Dude, I didn't promote this to anybody.
I did not either, actually. I was going to ask you about that.
I promoted it, actually, and I put up a, I'm going to put this up right here. I put up a new, if you're listening on the audio, I'm sorry, because I'm about to screen share something on the video. But it's our new website. Can you guys see that?
Yay!
Yeah. It looks great.
Pretty cool, right? You can subscribe with iTunes right there. You can get Scrivener, which we'll talk about more later. And then for the featured image for the first episode, I put the scene at the beginning of Star Wars with the Star Destroyer hunting down the whole...
Yeah, that was confusing to me when I first saw it, and then I realized why the hell that was up there. I was like, oh, fucking Garrett being a nerd.
Hey, Cristal, could you get your pussy out of the shot?
Excuse me?
Your cat is in the background.
Yes. 1 second.
Okay. No, don't. I was kidding, but she's gone now. Okay. Oh, we're fucking terrible.
All right.
I don't know why anybody listens.
Is she wearing leather pants?
I think she
No,
is.
she's wearing jeans.
Okay. Black
Dark
jeans,
jeans.
though. They look awesome.
Wow. Really?
No, really.
Is that going to be a soundbite at the next podcast we do?
Cristal, can you? Yeah, totally. I don't know why 16 people listen to us.
I think it was great.
Yeah, no, it was totally great. No, I was listening back to the first episode. It was actually pretty awesome, you know, despite all the lesbian talk, which, you know, it was a different kind of awesome. But
for some reason, I don't remember any of that lesbian talk.
Well, even the sound clip of Zach that I played, this one right here.
Because that's what Indiana Jones does. He fucks
I need to hear it again.
I said that to you, Cristal.
That is the reason we have 16 subscribers right there.
That's right.
Lesbians.
That
you put
line.
lesbians in the
word lesbian. Get on that shit. I have to say one thing though, which is something that I omitted in the first episode, which I actually feel terrible about, is failing to mention the inspiration behind and the reason for this podcast, which is the podcast that Zach and I have listened to for many months, which is the storytelling self-publishing podcast. And they are awesome. They're 3 guys. They're all independent authors, and they are strictly about self-publishing, taking your book and publishing it on Amazon. And they occasionally dive into the actual writing process and writing technology. And I wanted to do a podcast that was strictly about writing technology and, whether it was for writing novels or screenwriting. But I wanted to focus on that and let them do the whole self-publishing thing. But like without these guys, and they're totally awesome, this podcast would never have happened. So I have a cork board right up in front of me with a note on it to do that for the first episode. But after an hour and a half of no microphone and no audio and all of Zach's technical issues, I completely forgot. So that was an omission. And then in their very next podcast, like 2 days later, they were like, "What the fuck with Garrett? Like he does this whole other podcast." And, yeah,
I haven't actually even listened to the new episodes.
Yeah, no, it was pretty terrible. Actually, no, they called me off. They called me out in Better Off Undead, not the self-publishing. So I mean, and nobody listens to Better Off Undead, so it doesn't really matter.
I actually had some. I had some fun news, which was this week since the last podcast. I went into Starbucks really early one morning, and the barista is like, "Hey, you're the guy that wrote that book." I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, I was reading about that. It sounds really cool." I was like, "Thanks." Like, I never go into Starbucks. I don't know who the person is.
I saw that. I saw when you posted that on Facebook. Yeah. How did she hear about it? Did you ask? Like,
she heard through my Kickstarter that I did.
Because you were featured, right? You were one of the top.
No, I wasn't featured. I mean, I did very light promotion in some of very light. No, not. I'm talking about in person here in Miami. Not talking about on Facebook. That was a lot of promotion.
That was a shit ton of promotion.
Very light promotion here in Miami, but she heard about it and she, I guess she checked me out. She checked me out.
She checked you out,
and she liked me. It was kind of fun because it's like I haven't even fucking published my book yet, and she's like, "Hey, you're that dude." But that's I'm a white guy in Miami, so it's like. She probably says that to every white guy that walks in the door. "Hey, you're the guy that wrote that book."
90% of them are like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And 9% of them are like, "Does that mean you'll sleep with me?" And then you're the other 1%.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's only 10 white guys in Miami, so hey.
Yes, so awesome. This is all good.
Yeah.
When is your book coming out anyway, Zach?
I have it scheduled for April 1st, but I guess I'll have to get with my editor and see how fast we can get the edits done.
Yeah. Your editor can take your editor. It seems like your editor takes a long ass time to get back to you, and then all of a sudden he'll bang out like 20 books, 20 chapters in like one sitting.
And 20 books in between those chapters. They do.
Right.
I've heard your editor is very creative, and you have to watch out for cuss words being put in there accidentally and all kinds of manner of.
No, for any of our listeners who are not in on the joke, I am Zach's editor, and I have a tendency to leave him comments. Now he's writing a young adult book with the characters are 13 to 15, right?
It's like a PG book.
12 to 14.
12 to 14. Okay, so the characters are 12 to 14, and I'll leave him comments. I won't actually insert this in the book because I don't want to take a chance of it ending up in the final print. But I'll insert a comment like, "All right, now at this point, these two characters should start having sex." And he just like emails me back, "Wow, what the fuck?"
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat any of them, but
honestly, I want you to help me. I think you need to help me edit my my non-existent sex scene in my romance novel. I think you'd be perfect for that.
You don't have a sex scene in your romance
Not yet.
novel?
No, you know who you need to contact is Lexi Maxwell. Garrett will give you her email, and just write to her.
Really? Is she good?
Yeah.
She's really good.
Google, you look her up on Amazon. Buy one of her books. Check it out. Check it out.
Yeah, every time I start writing it, usually I'm in a Starbucks, so I just start like looking over my shoulder, and I'm like, can people read my thoughts right now? And I just feel like
people tell how wet I am.
See, when I write sex scenes, I talk out loud as I'm writing, and that's why I go to Starbucks. Oh, and then he inserted his you know, what the fuck? There's just a complete huge space around me.
It's like those old guys who look at porn on their iPads.
Dude.
Yeah.
That one creepy dude that's just staring at me.
Staring at you, just like, wow. So this is one of those episodes that if you're not watching the YouTube video, you are missing the fuck out.
Oh, okay. That totally reminds me. In the last episode, I listened back to it, and I described the opening scene of Jaws, and literally, this is my description. And then she goes in the water, and whoosh, 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 done.
Right.
And I'm going, that makes a lot of sense if you're watching the video. Makes zero sense if you're listening to the audio.
No, it works. It works surprisingly well for me personally. I listened back to it.
See, the hand movement is what I thought like made it go, pretty well.
I don't know. I think that if you're listening to the audio, it makes sense if you've seen Jaws, and if you haven't, then if you haven't seen Jaws, then we don't want you listening to our podcast.
Spoiler
I'm sorry.
Exactly.
And half our subscribers quit. So, all right, enough of this mindless rambling. Shall we get on to the topic of the day? I know you two are both super excited about this.
Yeah.
So excited.
Oh my god.
This is I've dubbed this a Garrett topic, one that only Garrett would be interested in doing.
I have a lot of opinions about it, and it's something that's very near and dear to my heart. And in particular, I'm pissed off when people misunderstand it or denigrate it. It's the 3-act structure, and for me, it's like, okay, it is. People tend to place two. I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like a lot of people misunderstand it. A lot of people misunderstand it, and they misuse it or think that it's invalid or something because they don't understand it fully. And that's why I kind of wanted to talk about it. And actually, we're sort of going to go... We're going to start talking about it, and we're going to start talking about the first act. And if we really run out of shit to say about the first act, then we're going to bail, and we'll start talking about... Then we'll move on to the second act and the third act. But I think that I, at least, could talk about each of the acts for an hour, so I wanted to make the next 3 shows first act, second act, third.
Yeah, but you can talk about anything and just continue to talk about it.
I can talk about anything for an hour. I had a hangnail one time, and I'll just go on for an hour on that.
So Garrett, let me ask you this. I think the most poignant question on the 3-act structure theory, because like you said, there are a lot of people, and I'll kind of put myself in that boat, that don't really follow it, don't necessarily think it's necessarily that important, or that, because there's so many examples of movies that have 5 acts. Shakespeare, I was reading about, almost all of his plays have 5 acts, not 3. And I mean, one of the things that a lot of critics of the 3-act structure say is that theoretically every story is going to have a beginning, a middle, and an ending. So you could classify all sorts of books and movies or anything as being 3-act structure, when in fact, if you really look at it closer, and especially if it was well written, it has 5 or 6 or 7 acts, such as, one of my favorite movies of all times, which is Pulp Fiction. It has, I think, 4 or 5 acts plus some little vignettes in there. So I don't know. That's my biggest question is there really a legitimate 3-act structure theory that works, or does everybody just try to classify everything they see as being 3 acts?
There is a legitimate 3-act structure that works. And the way that I base my 3 acts off of when I'm working... And now here's the thing about 3-act structure. 3-act structure is for a complete work. When you've got a series, whether it's a series of books or a series of movies, like my series Hit Girl that I'm writing right now. Okay. Each episode kind of has a 3-act structure, but not really, because it's an ongoing series. Because your third act, ideally, it's the end of your story. Everything is done. Everything is resolved. So if you're talking about an episodic series, you kind of, you have your acts and your structure for each episode, But like 3-act is like for novels. It can be for novel series. It's for single standalone movies. It's an encapsulating theory, which this is, this looks freaky in the YouTube, and podcast listeners are not going to be able to see what I'm doing with my hands. It's a completion. It takes things from beginning, middle to end, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason that it is so workable and it works so well is that it bases itself on conflict. It goes conflict to conflict to conflict, and it brings your main character or main characters through all of the conflicts that they need in order to have their own personal story arc and make the internal change that they need in order to effect external change in the world and fix the world. Your character starts off in the first act. You see their world as is. Now, there have to be problems with that world. Otherwise, what's the story? If it was a story about a perfect world, then you have no story. Stories are based on conflict. There has to be conflict for there to be drama. There has to be drama if there's going to be reader interest. Pleasantville would be the worst movie in the world if it just stayed the super happy Pleasantville that it was relatively early on in the film. So that's what your first act is all about, is it's establishing your character's main world that they're starting off from, and all of the problems and the conflicts that start from there.
I think that saying that it goes conflict to conflict is actually pretty accurate. I can see why it would make more sense. Usually, like the research I've done on 3-act structure, because I've just never really followed it, is that what everybody talks about, or most people, is that the hero has to undergo some kind of personal and spiritual growth and development, and something has to change internally and blah blah blah, and I just don't believe in that. There definitely has to be conflict, because there has to be things that catalyze the different scenes, but I never really quite agreed with the hero has to grow and improve, because there's just so many movies where there's just none of that. I mean, Pulp Fiction, again, another example. Nobody improves or has some kind of spiritual realization. Jack Reacher, another great movie, same thing.
I think that's a bit deep, though. I think that's a bit of a very deep, view on what has to happen, because a spiritual movement is like, it doesn't have to be some huge thing, because at the end of Act 1, like your character basically has to have made a decision that he's going to try to handle whatever the hell's happening.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be something huge. In my book, there's no, massive spiritual life-changing experience that, Danny is trying to fix or anything. And I'm totally in your boat as well. I don't ever and have never gone, here's my 3-act structure. Now, my book, if you read it, it's 3-act structure all the way.
Same with mine, actually.
Yeah, it was not intentional,
Yeah.
But I kind of disagree. Like, I don't feel like it has to be, some overly, dramatic, religious experience type of thing.
Right.
I think that there has to be growth in order for it to be a great movie or story. I don't think that growth always happens, but going back to Pulp Fiction, dude, one motherfucker in that shit goes through, and like, it doesn't have to be religious. That's not what I was saying. But one motherfucker goes through some hardcore religious spiritual transformation, and it's Samuel L. Jackson. He starts off the movie and he's just like a hitman or whatever, and then the dude busts out of the wall and like fires at him and shoots and misses him and John Travolta with all of his bullets, and
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Please, if you haven't seen Pulp Fiction by now, go hang yourself.
Christ almighty. Although that was my bad. I actually should have said spoiler alert. And he spends the whole rest of the movie talking to John Travolta about, like, no, that was an act of God. Like, he believes, and the whole, spoiler alert, the whole last section of the film is him talking to the two people who burst into the diner, and they try to take his briefcase, and the briefcase has the MacGuffin in it, and he gives them this whole big long speech about how, like, now I'm going through some spiritual shit right now, and I cannot let you take this briefcase because it would hamper my personal growth. And like he actually does go through a major character change. John Travolta doesn't. And what happens to John Travolta? He gets shot in the head repeatedly.
I think he gets shot in the chest.
Shot in the chest repeatedly. Yeah, sorry.
Falls into the
Bruce
bathtub.
Willis does go through character growth. He survives. Is this a moral lesson that you have to grow as a person in order to survive in Quentin Tarantino's ideology? Maybe. He's kind of famous for...
Who the hell knows what he thinks?
I do.
Really?
No, but like in Django, I made this point. I wrote on my blog, GBR0 Benson. No, on my blog, I wrote a movie review for Django. And Christoph Waltz, who won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, he's phenomenal in that movie. He is supremely polite and dapper and so awesome. Such like a high gentlemanly type thing and everything.
I haven't seen this movie, just so you know.
Okay. No, I have not yet either.
I don't want you to give anything away because I want to.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
I know.
Okay.
Spoiler alert.
No spoilers. No alerts.
Headphones are off.
Okay.
I'm walking out right now.
Come back, Zach. Never mind. But Tarantino has a way of, if you look for it, there's like a very hard moral lesson. If you don't do what I think is right, you will get shot in the face via this character. It's like, this character is this way, and I think that's the right way, and as soon as he changes from that, he gets shot in the face. Or John Travolta. John Travolta doesn't go through a whole lot of character growth in that movie, and he's the one denying God and denying religion and yada, yada, yada. He gets shot. He gets killed. You know, it's like...
Yeah. Vin Rames. Was it Vin Rames that was in that?
Pulp Fiction?
Yeah.
No, it was MCD.
MCD.
Michael
Yes,
Clark Duncan.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Character growth, you know. Anal rape is not a very fun thing.
No, yeah, exactly. But yeah, for the first act, for me, the most important part of the first, there's two most important parts of the first act. And again, I kind of take this from Save the Cat, which if you listen to the first episode and you want to write anything and you haven't bought that book yet, fucking please buy and read that book. He talks about there's two really, really important things in the first act. The first one is the statement of your theme. Whether you're writing a book or you're writing a movie, you generally have a theme. The current theme that runs through a lot of my writing right now is like personal responsibility and like the need to do something when you see something is wrong or messed up, and it's not okay to just like ignore what's going on in a non-optimum situation. So that is a theme that, and your theme gets stated in the first act, because that's something that your movie is going to continue to refer back to and go back and talk about and that sort of thing. The other thing is the end of Act 1 and the break into Act 2, and what that is some action, conflict, or circumstance happens which shatters your hero's perfect little idyllic world, which isn't a perfect little idyllic world. There are problems and there's things, but he is complacent, and something happens to break him out of his complacency. That's what then launches the whole rest of the story. For Luke Skywalker, it's the stormtroopers coming down. It's R2-D2 first, but that's not really the break into Act 2. The break into Act 2 is the stormtroopers come down and kill Aunt Veru and Uncle Owen. They're killed.
God damn, you remember the names and everything.
Aunt Veru.
You remember the names?
Yeah,
are those real names?
Yeah,
those are the legitimate names.
Those are their actual names. It's either Veru or Baru, but I'm almost positive it's Veru. His aunt and uncle are killed, and he comes back to the farm, and Obi-Wan's like, oh, you couldn't have saved them, yada, yada, yada. And he says, I want to come with you and I want to become a Jedi. Boom! You're into Act 2. Like, Act 2 has now begun because some cataclysmic event has come in, changed his world, and he decides, I'm going to go on this adventure. And that's the basis of it.
Right.
And I think you can find that in pretty much any good story. One movie that I can think of that I couldn't find 3 acts, like I analyzed it and I couldn't find the 3 acts, Memento.
Have not seen it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, you're talking about the one that's backwards, right?
Yeah, it's backwards. It goes the guy with short-term memory loss.
That's funny because I when you told me that we were doing this, the first movie I thought of was Memento, and I was like, but if you played that forward, if you played it backwards but forward, you would find it.
Right. And it would have exactly.
Right.
It would go that way.
Right,
But
exactly.
here's the thing, and again, this is from Save the Cat. I'm a real Save the Cat fanboy.
I
When
know.
somebody, I know you know.
Okay.
Right?
Should I leave you two alone?
You know it. He talks about Memento, and he's like, I always go out and I go with my formula and I do my thing, and people are always like, well, what about Memento? That doesn't have 3 acts. That doesn't fit into most of the typical genres. And he's like, Memento was not a successful film. It was a great film. It's one of my favorite films of all time.
I now have to see it.
Oh, you really do.
I've never seen it.
It's great.
It's fantastic. It's an early Guy Pearce movie, and it's one of Christopher Nolan's first movies ever. Christopher Nolan is the director. You know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Never sure. You are a girl.
No, I've heard of Christopher Nolan. Can you refresh my memory though on what else he's done in life?
You kidding?
I just don't remember. That's all.
The Dark Knight, the Batman.
Oh yes,
Batman
yes. Of course. I knew that.
And there go the rest of our listeners.
And everybody else is like, he doesn't even know who Christopher Nolan is. I'm out.
No, I knew who that was. I just couldn't remember. It was evading me. That's all.
Right. Okay. So.
That's why I never ask who anybody is. I just go, Yeah, okay.
Just Google it on your phone real quick. It's like,
oh yeah, I love his work. Oh shit, he's a director.
So Memento was not a successful film. It just didn't ever find its audience, and it had a cult following, and it found its appeal to a certain artistic segment of the populace, and it launched his career in all these sort of things. But it's like, if he'd kept making films like Memento, he wouldn't be Christopher Nolan. I have a bank account with hundreds of millions of dollars in it, and I could buy your country.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at the rest of his films, all of the Batman movies and Inception and yada yada, like those are 3-act films. They just are.
Yeah.
But again, I feel like you can find 3-act structure in almost anything.
Yes.
Because you can break anything up into 3-act structure.
And in fact, a lot of those 3-act structure films, if you look at them, you could argue that they have 4 or 5 acts, because there's a lot of twists and turns and grades of. Some of them really stick to 3, but some of them are just, like I think a really traditional, like, wow, this is a 3-act structure and follows everything to the T. And for me, would be The Truman Show. That really it includes that whole the growth of the guy, the development, the conflict, and everything, because he realizes that he's in a movie set. And
that's a good example.
That's I think a perfect shining example of a 3-act structure, or one of these cheesy Hollywood pre-manufactured canned films like Transformers, which put me to sleep always, inevitably.
See,
somewhere between
those are last.
Well, here, this will get some people back. The one that I think of is Boondock Saints, and I think that Boondock Saints has a great 3-act structure, because it's very defined. I'd have to watch it again because I haven't watched it in a little bit, but I'm pretty sure that the first act ends on the call from God.
Right.
Exactly. And it's like right when you see that, you go, oh, there's the end of the first act. Here comes the second act.
Right. Exactly. So. And what it is it's not only a circumstance that shatters the reality of your protagonist or protagonists in that case. Right. It is that usually after that there's a debate of one kind or another. It's an internal debate where it's like, he's like, what am I going to do? Should I do this? Should I not do this? Or it's a debate with other people. I've almost finished my first screenplay really soon now, and I'm super fucking excited about it. Like, it's going to be so awesome. Yeah. Screenplay, like feature film script. I've never finished one before, awesome. Just so you know.
Oh,
is that the project?
Nope, never have.
What? Okay.
Is that the project you're working on with Nicole? My friend Nicole?
I'm working on a lot of projects with Nicole.
No shit.
And that, if that sounded dirty, that's not how I am.
I wish I were.
Yeah, Zach's met Nicole.
No,
have you met Nicole? The
Nope.
sexy, bombastic blonde.
I've talked to her on Facebook, and I've seen a picture of her on David's phone.
Oh.
Ooh, David has a picture of Nicole on his phone.
David's friends with Nicole.
I have a picture of Garrett on my phone.
That does not surprise.
So no, but in basically a guy's a member of a band. I don't want to get too far into it because I don't want somebody stealing my idea because I'm all too familiar with people listening to podcasts and stealing story ideas. Yeah.
This is a great story idea.
Well, I like it. And this guy gets offered a record deal, but there's a lot of stipulations to it. There's a lot of conditions and things that he has to, like conditions that he has to meet. And so he goes back to his band because somebody makes him the offer. This record producer makes him the offer, and then he goes back to his band, and they're like, "Dude, take the deal. We're gonna make our first record." Da 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 da. And he's like, "I don't want to give up these things and these rights, and I don't want to do this, and I don't want to do that." So it's this debate that goes on for like 3 or 4 pages of like, should we do this or not? And then there's the personal decision by the character, and then he goes in, and that is your end of your first act and your break into your second act.
Right.
Get what I'm saying?
Right.
I get what you're saying.
I mean,
I don't disagree with the 3-act structure.
Cristal does.
I just
I'm like a little more convinced. My main disagreement stemmed from the fact that there has to be some kind of internal growth and this and that, and I was just thinking. Deep. Yeah, it's a little too deep. But the way you explained it, there's conflict, and yeah, I can see how in most cases, people grow because we're human beings and we learn normally. Most people usually learn from their mistakes and they learn from the things they go through in life, But I just felt like, there's so many movies that are great and don't follow that. So that was kind of my disagreement. But
most people change, usually for the worst.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a
life is pain. Life is only pain.
Those were self-publishing podcast jokes. See, Zach and I are big fans. Johnny, Sean, Dave, please don't sue us, please.
I need to start listening to those guys.
You fucking no, you really do. You actually really do.
They're on episode 37, I think.
No, wow. Way past that. They're in their 50s. They're on 30. They're in their 30s on Better Off Undead.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, how many followers do they have? Like a lot?
Yeah, like a lot. Like just on YouTube, I don't know how many subscribers of the podcast, but like hundreds of subscribers on YouTube. We have 6.
Teen.
Yeah,
no,
16.
no. We have 16 subscribers to the podcast audio.
Yeah.
We have actually. Hold on YouTube.
Oh, on YouTube, one of those is me.
Yeah, me. One of them is me.
I should probably subscribe too.
So we have 3.
Hold on.
And I followed it with my 4 other accounts as well.
So yeah, somebody else vamp for a minute. I'm gonna check this out because I think
because that's what Indiana Jones does. He goes around fucking lesbians.
Fuck. Come on, somebody else pick up the slack. I gotta look this up. I think this is gonna be the
okay.
funniest
Oh,
thing
so
ever.
what I was saying, I don't disagree with the 3-act structure, but I never think of I'm gonna be using it.
We have 3 subscribers.
And 2 of them
are you and me.
I'm pretty sure the 3rd is Chrissy.
Probably. I would not be surprised at all.
Shout out to Chrissy.
Shout out to Chrissy Moss, our first and so far only fan.
Anyway, I don't disagree with it. I just don't intentionally use it. Which, whatever.
Right, and but that's the thing, is that I think that if people understood it a little bit better, it's a powerful tool. Like there's no denying that it is a powerful tool because I mean it works, and it's like you said earlier, Cristal, that like Shakespeare, didn't use it or had more acts in that. I don't know, if I took Romeo and Juliet, I'd find 3 acts in that like right away.
There's 5. There's 5. I can pull up the website that I was reading on that because honestly, I read Romeo and Juliet in like high school. But there's 5 acts.
But you can
when I read it, I remembered.
Sorry, he broke it into 5 acts, but you can break it into 3 acts. That's the thing.
Yeah, a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's my argument.
Where he
It starts, it continues, and it finishes.
Where his reasoning fell down is where he broke up his acts, because I don't think that the guy who wrote that article had a full handle on what an act is. It is a change. It's not only a change in the conflict of the story, it is a change in the nature of the conflict. Because in Romeo and Juliet, it's Romeo, here he is, he's doing his thing, and da-da-da-da-da. He meets Juliet. He falls in love with her. There's his debate with his friend, and then he's like, I'm a bone this bitch with my dick. And from that point, the nature of the story has changed. It has gone from Romeo being a dude to Romeo courting Juliet. Who's fiddling with their microphone?
Zach, he's panting heavily for some reason.
No, I think...
Get a grip, Zach.
I think you're fondling your mic, Cristal, a little bit.
I am not fondling my mic.
That's you.
Okay,
That's
I am not fondling my mic.
Okay.
Wow.
So
my
it's
husband
gonna be
must
great
be
for the
in
audio
in the hallway,
listeners.
like, what the hell?
So then the second act is him courting Juliet, and it's all of the things that they go through, and then she falls in love, and they're trying to spend more and more time together.
Okay, but all the things they go through could
But all the things they go through are not acts. They are not acts because it's the same story. It's, I want to go spend more time with Juliet. I want to go spend more time with... You shouldn't go spend more time with Juliet. She's from the other family. Romeo shouldn't spend more time with you. You're from the other family. It's just the same... Sorry, go ahead, Zach. Somebody else jump in, because I feel like I've dominated.
I just have to say that Shakespeare wrote 5 acts, a 5-act play, because he's fucking writing a play. Okay, this was presented, in what was it, 16th, 15th century or whatever.
Okay,
the
but
fuck.
And the other
films
thing
are
is,
called screenplays.
Right. No,
Okay,
but the other thing is an act in a play is a complete, it's a different thing. You can have
exactly.
You can have acts in a play that are that's a film terminology thing, and it's separate from the storytelling aspect of writing a play. When you're writing a play, you break it up into as many acts as you need to for breaks, pauses. You can introduce an act because all of the actors have to go do costume changes and makeup and put on a different wig, And it's
that's what I'm saying. If this guy that wrote that article if this guy wrote this article and he based it off of that, then that's what I'm saying. It's like you can't base it off of that because it's written because it's a fucking play.
Right.
That's how you write plays.
Right.
So if that's what he's basing it off of, then he's talking about plays. He's not talking about books, and it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
So at this point, I feel obligated to say that I can't go for a whole another half an hour on just the first act. So I'm going to break.
We're only on a half hour.
About 40 minutes.
We're in like 45 minutes.
40 minutes.
40.
Crystal's timing. I don't want to get the fuck out of here.
Crystal's like, I'm done. Me and my husband
I'm going to review my story. Like, okay, where does the second act begin,
Okay, so let's get into the second act. And the second act, here's the thing, and everybody talks about, the beginning of the story is easy, the end of the story is easy, and everything in the middle sucks. Okay, the middle of a story is usually a problem. It is usually a problem for people because when you're thinking up a story, you're like, okay, dude, what if there's a guy and he's a hitchhiker on spaceships, and there's this whole vast empire, and he just hitchhikes spaceship to spaceship, and we just follow him, and he's just a hitchhiker, and everybody thinks he's like a bum, and da-da-da-da-da, and he's just hitchhiking on all these spaceships, and that's what the story is. And you're like, that's a great idea, that's a great premise, that's a great beginning for a story. And then you're like, but then at the end, he turns out to have been the king of the galaxy, the galactic empire, and he's been hitchhiking to find out things about the society and how it's breaking down, and when he figures it out, he resumes his rightful place as the emperor and uses that to destroy the bad guy. And
Spoiler alert.
I'm making this up.
No, you're not. That's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
No, it really isn't.
No, it
It's not?
really isn't.
That is so the Hitchhiker's Guide. Oh, really? He's not the Emperor in the end? I'm like, maybe I missed that part. This is so Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh
what
my
the
God.
hell? He just...
You're describing Jaws,
Plagiarism.
Garrett.
You just lost our 2 YouTube subscribers. Zach and I don't even want to listen to this shit anymore.
That was so Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
It really wasn't.
And he said hitchhiking.
In the galaxy.
Okay.
And there's an empire of bureaucrats.
It's not a thing. This is not a thing. What you're talking about is not a thing. Okay. So that's a cool ending. That's like a great idea for an ending. But then what happens in between? Like all of that stuff. Okay. Now, here's the thing. I think that the first act is your hero being led into a conflict that he has not truly ever noticed or understood before. So first act, it's like, boom, something happens, and he's like, I've got to do something about this, and I'm going to go become a Jedi. I'm going to take the ring to Mordor. I'm going to discover the Holy Grail. Whatever it is, he's going to go do that thing. I'm going to leave the Matrix and fight with Morpheus. All of these things, right? Like I'm going to escape the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The third act, you got to jump to the third act to really understand what the second act is all about.
Right.
The third act is when the break into the third act is when the hero discovers the true nature of his conflict. He discovers what is actually going on, and this sounds very deep and metaphorical. I'm only describing it deep and metaphorically because it's actually easy to think about it that way. But he discovers what really needs to be done to resolve the whole conflict, and then he does that. Luke Skywalker discovers that they've got to blow up the Death Star in order to stop the Empire. Frodo Frodo gets into Mordor and realizes that he has to cross the plains in order to destroy the ring. Neo discovers that he is the one, and he knows, and he accepts that fact, and now he can beat Agent Smith.
Is that after he's been shot? Would that be the point?
No. That's like the last 2 minutes of the film.
I know. I just feel like that's where he realized that.
No, where he realizes is where the phone gets shot in his hand.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And Trinity says, "Run, Neo." And he turns and looks at Agent Smith, and she says, "What is he doing?" And Morpheus says, "He's beginning to believe." Boom! You're in your third act.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's your third act, if that's when your hero has discovered what is the actual conflict internally and externally that he needs to resolve, what's your second act? It's what gets him to that point. And
right,
you just
exactly.
You just work backwards. How does he just,
No, I totally agree. And to back up that point, I'm hooked up with a school out here in Miami, and I had one of the high school students ask me for some help one day, and I sat down with her because she's really interested in writing, and she was having trouble, and she had me read what she had, and it's a pretty interesting storyline, but she's like, I don't know where to take it from here. And I feel like things are changing and whatever. So, and I had read it. She basically had her first act, and she got into the second act. This person fell into the world and knew that they need to get out of this strange world, right? And she's like, I don't know where to go from here. I was like, okay, look, you need to figure out what your ending is, because once you find out your ending, you can fill in the steps between the beginning and the ending. Because if you don't know where you're headed, then you don't know how you're going to get to wherever the hell you're headed. You need to know what your goal is, or you're not going to be able to get to anything. You're just going to wander. And that's how I feel that, like, it's exactly what you're saying. I just didn't describe it in the 3-act structure because, I'm just not as sophisticated as you are. But, So, but I totally agree.
Cristal,
So, yeah.
You looked like you were about to say something, but then you
No, I was
you
just
bailed.
the one argument I guess I can make in favor of the 3-act structure is that you know where you're going with your story. Like you have a clear cut kind of path of what you're doing. And I've always kind of been more of an organic writer, and that's
Fucking
great with
vegans.
short. Sorry.
Fucking vegans.
No, I've been a wholesome, organic writer. I just write, a lot of times I have a dream, I sit down, I write it, 2 hours later I have a story. But that works really great with short stories. It doesn't work with novels or 80,000 plus word books. It just doesn't, because then you're like, oh my God, I have the best freaking ending for my story. I just woke up from a dream and it seems amazing. And then you analyze it and it's totally implausible. And I really believe that even in fiction, your ending and what your character does has to be plausible. Even if it's totally and utterly impossible, it's the author's job to really make it believable. And I've had that. I've had times where I didn't really think the ending through, and because of that, I got stuck, if you will, in my second act, because I now had to take my characters in a certain direction that was implausible, and because of that, I didn't know where to take it. And what to do with it. So I can see how it, at least having that structure can help you finish a story.
Yeah, it definitely can, and I agree with you on that. And just by taking the example of King of Kong, right? Mm-hmm. It's you have your beginning, and you had, at least when we talked about it, you had your ending for it, and you were having trouble in the middle, but you need to think with, okay, well, if that's my ending, how are we going to get from point A to B? But you also have to have an actual understanding of what you're writing, because if you're going to be writing something that is, extraordinary, where you can have a giant gorilla running through, Hong Kong or whatever, and not everybody's fucking freaking out, then it's like you can go that route. If not, then you have to go a different route. But if you know your story structure, or if you know what you're actually, like what your universe is, what your world is, then you can, and your beginning and your end, then you can easily fill in that second act, I feel.
Yeah, that's true. So just to fill people in the King of Kong, or its acronym, the cock.
Don't give.
God.
The cock.
Hold on. Innuendo. There we go.
Very nice. Don't give too much away on this, though, Cristal. We don't want somebody stealing.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to let people know that it's a story I'm working on. It's a short story. It's based on a dream, and I got stuck with the ending because the ending involved killing the main character
in a young adult / children's book, and I'm like, you can't do that. You cannot do that. Or you can, but not with her character.
Yeah,
well, Twilight did. Bella died.
No, she.
That's a joke.
Because she actually did.
Oh, Cristal jumped in there pretty quick. No, she didn't. I thought you hadn't read them.
No, I admitted to reading them.
Yeah,
after you admitted to reading them, I admitted to reading them. I'll even go as far as to admit that I've read the first 78 pages of 50 Shades of Grey.
Garrett's read that 3 times.
After that, she was done.
Yes, I was.
I need a cigarette.
Yes, I was.
I need a cigarette.
Innuendo.
Innuendo.
Okay,
There
you
you
need
go.
a new fucking sound clip, Garrett. You've played that 5 times.
I'll work on it. Well, hey, I mean, there's always...
Because that's what Indiana Jones does. He fucks lesbians a lot. That's a great sound clip.
It really is. Well, 50 Shades of Grey is an excellent example of the 3-act structure.
I wouldn't know.
It's not. I don't even know. I don't know where I was going with that.
I have a feeling that book violates every single theory and premise of what you need to do to write a successful book.
That's not all it violates.
We can all go to hell because look how many millions of copies it sold.
Right, and that's the thing. I mean... okay.
It takes a big fat dump on any sort of 3-act theory you have or anything.
No, it just happens to be successful.
No, that's true. But here's how 50 Shades of Grey relates to the 3-act structure.
Have you read it? Let me ask first.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. But here's the thing. I already know from multiple people, including the self-publishing podcast guys, like, they've read it and they're like, it's really poorly written. Like, it's not well written. Go to Amazon. Look at the reviews page. People are like, it's not well written. It is not a good story, but it's hot and it made...
But I got off 10 times.
Exactly. It's like, I got off a lot. That's what it's all about. So here's the thing. as with anything, and in particular, as with anything that we ever say on this podcast, and anything that anybody else tells you, take rules with a grain of salt. Rules are kind of bullshit. If you're an artist, you're already breaking rules. So you can look at rules and you can be like, well, I'm going to try to break it. But it's more successful to understand why the rule exists and then make a conscious choice about breaking it. Because if you try and just fly off into the wild blue yonder and do something that's totally contrary to all the rules, you're trying to reinvent the wheel. And you might write a 50 Shades of Grey. You might. But for every 50 Shades of Grey, one of them, there are thousands of unsold manuscripts out there that are absolute pieces of shit because they didn't try to follow the rules either. And then there are lots of really, really good, well-received books that have sold millions of copies that also broke the rules. But they knew what they were doing, they knew the rules, they studied them, and they made a conscious decision of, I'm going to do this.
And that comes down to editor's notes as well. Don't follow an editor's note just because they give you the note.
Right.
You need to, like, if you understand the note, a good editor will say, look, you need to fix this, and here's the rule on that, and they'll link it. That's what Garrett does. It's amazing because if you read my profile on our website, I am not a grammarian. I am not a speller. I'm a storyteller, and Garrett is the anal, fucking grammar Nazi, which is fantastic to have him as an editor. So, but his notes are, you need to have this here, and here's the rule on it. I'll read the rule, and for the majority of the time, I'll go, okay, I agree with that, and it flows correctly. But there are those times where I'm like, that doesn't flow how I want it to, so I'm not going to use it. But I understand, where he's coming from, and I understand the rule, and I feel like that. It falls into exactly what you're talking about with understanding what the rule is, but not necessarily having to follow it as long as you understand it.
Right. If you just like want a buck 3-act structure and you're just like, well, fuck this, I'm gonna go do something else. Before you do that, do something super formulaic. This is actually a good way to break free of restrictions. If you feel like you're being restricted by rules that you've learned, let's say that you learn 3-act structure and you feel restricted by it. Write something that's so blatantly 3-act structure, it's like people would puke if they read it. Just write it as a short story or a short novella, 20,000 words, something like that. If you're me, you can crank that out in an afternoon. But like write it so that it's so goddamn. Crystal's flipping me off. If you're listening to the audio, Crystal just shoved her middle finger into the camera.
Both of them.
Both of them. But write something that's blatantly. It's like, John was home. John was happy. John's mom said, you need to get a job. I'm not paying for you anymore, and you're not allowed to live here. And then John goes and gets the job, and like just the most banal 3-act thing that you can.
Like, dude, where's my car?
Yeah, I wouldn't say
it doesn't have to be stupid.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't say that's the most banal 3-act thing I've ever heard of, but do something like that, and then, see where it works for you, see where it doesn't, and then say, all right, now what if I tried it off in this direction, and then write it and see how it goes. I mean, maybe you'll discover the new 4-act structure, which is the way that all stories should be told, but probably not. No.
Probably not.
Well, I mean, statistically speaking, it's like, 1 in every million people makes some like fantastic new discovery that changes the face of a technology. So statistically speaking, no, you're not going to, but don't.
Especially if you're listening to us.
Especially, dude, if you're listening to us, you're already gone. So.
Yeah, you're fucked.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, I think that even if you have a great 3-act structure, what makes a good book are like so many different factors,
Right.
That like 50 Shades of Grey, it's not a good book, but it is because look how many books it's sold. So obviously, and people have read the entire trilogy. There's people out there that have actually read all 3 freaking books. So there's something about it that works, obviously. And I just think it's a combination of factors, and some of those factors are completely out of the writer's hands. It just has to do with how the book is received and put into the market. And anyways, I know that's a podcast for another time.
Right.
But
I was just going to say that there are there's a number of factors that make a good book. Like, for example, Stephen King, he doesn't always have the best structured stories, and I haven't read a lot of his books, but the endings of some of them are apparently pretty terrible, per our friend Sean Platt over at Self Publishing. But motherfucker creates characters that are amazing. That's his strongest thing. His characters are amazing, and everybody loves his characters. You can't help but be intrigued by his characters. So if you've got flawless 3-act structure, and you know what was a great 3-act structure movie with a crap-ass character that did really bad at the box? Tomb Raider. Total 3-act, but she was just a boring character who never did anything, and she was super hot, but it's like...
I love Tomb Raider.
Okay.
But she was an amazing character. Yeah, she had a giant braid, and she could do all kinds of things.
Really? What personal growth did she go through in that movie?
Breast.
Yes.
Right.
So, yeah, no.
She shoved her tits in the camera a record number of times. That's what her personal... Like, dude, if I want to watch a hot chick, I'll just go watch porn. I mean, I wouldn't.
She was betrayed by an ex-lover or something like that. Okay. And realized that you shouldn't trust anyone.
That's number 2, I think. But anyway, doesn't matter. The movie wasn't that great, I feel. I'd rather play the video game because that's much better.
And much hotter, and you can make her do whatever you want.
And that new one that's coming out looks fucking amazing.
So dope.
So good.
By the way,
I've sworn off video games. I'm not playing any video games.
I don't either. I'm
a married woman. I have laundry to do and other kinds of crap.
Get in the kitchen.
Wow, that was the most sexist thing I've ever heard from a married woman. I'm a married woman. I got laundry to do. Okay.
It's not sexist. It's reality is what it is, okay?
Okay.
It's called the reality.
All right, Andy.
I'm calling your wife later.
No. I'm on her side. She's on my side. Trust me. No, but as a separate note, we should get to wrapping up here. But I'm going to bring on a video game developer pretty soon here, and we're going to talk about the art of storytelling in video games, because that is one thing that I'm particularly interested in. I would love that. Ryan Alamania, him, Zach. Yeah. He's the lead video game developer for Rose Online, and if he happens to be already subscribed to the podcast and listening to it, I haven't actually asked him in advance. So if you're listening to this for the first time, Ryan, I just kind of assumed that you'd say yes because I know you will. Come on, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. So that's it for today's show. In summary, Cristal hates 3-act structure and thinks it's a load of shit.
I did not say that.
That
should be a sound clip.
And I'm the only person who actually understands.
What a dick.
What a dick.
He's totally putting us down. Did you see the comment that he put on the website? We hate Ender's Game. We're like, fuck you, dude. That's not what we said at all.
Privilege of being the producer. Love it.
My favorite one tonight was, if you're me, you can crank out 20,000 words in an evening.
I wish that were.
I'm glad that we did this 3-act structure in one episode instead of 3.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that shit.
Yeah.
No, it would have gone bad in about middle of episode 2. Yeah. So I think we nicely condensed it. Okay, I'm gonna kick in the music here. Okay, so that's it for today's storytelling podcast. You can now check out our website at thestorytellingpodcast.com. Leave us comments. We would love to hear from you, and we want to know what else you guys want to know about the art of storytelling. And we probably don't know any more than you do, but we'll give it a shot. Subscribe to us and review us on iTunes. Again, it's the Storytelling Podcast. And check out my blog at gbr0binson.com. Zach's blog at zcbolger.com, and Cristal doesn't have one yet, but eventually we'll convince her to have one. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.